Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Constant Taylor, and welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest, and you guys are in for a treat. If you guys are looking to improve your personal and professional productivity and effectiveness, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Eric Bloom. Eric has been speaking professionally for over 7 years. The content that he primarily speaks on is IT leadership and productivity. He's based out of Boston, and he has 4 books, including Manager Mechanics, Tips and Advice for First-Time Managers, 52 Great Management Tips, Your IT Career, and The CIO's Guide to Staffing Needs, Growth, and Productivity. His newest book that's coming out soon is called Productivity Success. Eric, that's quite a bio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. I'd like to kick off the show by asking you to tell the listeners, how do you help businesses and professionals become more efficient and productive?
Well, first is you have to understand yourself. So that comes into actually a professional branding piece. Is that how are you viewed? Is that what do others think of you, which will have a dramatic effect of your professional growth. From there, you have to be really willing to sit back and look at yourself and your organization and answer questions related to what should you continue to do, what should you stop doing, and what should you start doing. For anyone in the IT world who's used Agile, that will sound very, very familiar because those are questions that are asked at the end of Agile-related projects. From there, what I would say is that you really need to align your productivity goals with your corporate goals. There's a quote out there, forgive me, I can't think of who said it, but what the quote is that the biggest waste of time is improving a process that shouldn't have existed in the first place. So as a result is that really the key to driving your productivity is driving it in a direction that relates to your corporate goals. And at the end of the day, people don't really care about productivity. What they really care about is the time, money, and resources that enhanced productivity provides.
Excellent. So how do you specifically help them in improving their productivity and making sure that they are doing the activities that lead to more value for their customers?
Well, we do that in 2 ways. First of all, you need to have a productivity culture, and that is conducive to productivity happening within your organization. With that, you also then have to look at what we like to call productivity enablers. What they are is we have basically 8 of them. You have to be able to to have constructive delegation, to delegate well. Next is improved process. From there, effective communication. Email is a wonderful thing. Texting is a wonderful thing, as are other modes of communication. But are they being used effectively within your teams? Next is, and this is a big one now as the baby boomer groups are starting to retire, is knowledge transfer. Is that as older baby boomers are beginning to retire, how do you collect and use that corporate knowledge within younger people coming into the workforce? Time management has always been a big one. And also a favorite one of mine actually is asset reuse. What reuse is I'd like to come in and ask companies or ask people the question of what assets does your company currently have? And by that, I don't mean money. I mean things that it owns. For example, it could be client lists, things that they've acquired over time. It could be software that they've purchased. If they've purchased something like Microsoft Project that they use within one part of the company, if they have a site license for it and it would be free to be used in other parts of the company, where else would that be effective? So basically, you're getting more use out of the assets, the internal processes, et cetera, that you've put together over the years. And next is meeting management. Is that so often is that there's more people in meetings, they happen more often than they should. So it's really these 8 areas that should be considered when trying to enhance an organization's productivity. If I may say one more item on that, is you have to look at these 8 holistically. What I mean by that, it's very, very easy that improving productivity in one area, the gains that you make, totally have an adverse effect on another productivity measure. For example, wouldn't it be great if you had only 50% of the meetings that you currently have? Sounds like a great thing. Unless, of course, it now costs you 4 extra hours a day writing emails related to the correspondence that would have happened in those meetings.
Excellent point. Now, just looking at, let's look at asset reuse, for example. How do you go about, and the first thing that came to my mind was internal social media, where someone would post, hey, I've got a 2003 version of Microsoft Project if anyone needs it. How do you go about implementing that into for companies to use that effectively?
Okay. Is for the reuse in general or for a particular product?
No, in general, high level.
Okay, well, I would say the first thing you need to do is to create an inventory of what are your internal assets. It could be software that you built internally. It could be great processes related to your sales cycle. It could be, anything that you would consider a company asset that caused company blood, sweat, and tears to make it be created and be able to use. From there, it needs to be categorized and combined with other things. Let me speak on their intellectual property for a second. They have, say, training materials related to their products. They have marketing materials. They have internal documents written on how maybe they're a software company and how their products should be used. Can those be converted into company blogs, to white papers that could be downloaded to clients to build their email addresses, etc.? So it's basically so anyway. That is what the logical connection is. From there, it's brainstorming and seeing how these assets can be reused. Then you need to, of course, gain internal approval. From there, what you would do is you would implement a reuse plan, and then most important to all of it is then you have to measure the results. That if you took those internal papers that you had written, convert them into a white paper, and put it on your website for free download, what was the result of that? Did they increase, say, 5,000 or 10,000 downloads they were able to get to increase their email lists for marketing purposes, and so on? So one of the keys to reuse, again, is not only categorizing how to use it, but then measure the return on investment of having done so.
Okay, excellent. The next point that I would like to dive into is how does customer service, customer support play into the 8 holistic pillars here?
The way that I would say that is for customer support is that I like to think of it, and this actually was a concept that was brought up defined by the president of SAS Airlines. Or actually, I take that back. He was the CEO of SAS Airlines. That every time you interact with a customer, it's a moment of truth. So what I would say is that what are the moments of truth associated with that particular customer service job? Is it strictly them calling in for advice? Is it outreach? Is it technical support? What is the specific things that people are called into? And then from there, how these 8 productivity amplifiers would be engaged is, for example, how can you improve the processes related to client service? Another big one here could be time management, is that if you can increase the productivity, the individual productivity of the people in client service, then what it does, it allows them to do more outreach to their clients.
Okay. Yeah, the phrase that you mentioned, I also think about moment of truth, defining moment, and that's kind of like the moment in which you have the opportunity to gain a loyal lifetime customer or create a person who goes out on the internet and just creates havoc for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that, one of the most important processes in customer service is when they call in with an issue or a problem of some sort, is to be able to effectively handle it. There was a study, I won't say who it was for, but I'll just say by a large retail brand we would all know, that they said that when there was a major difficulty, a major issue, it was on pricing or returns or product quality or whatever, is they only had about a 19% return by that customer to their store, unless they properly handled it from a customer service perspective, in which case if they properly handled the situation to the customer's satisfaction, then there was a 95% return by those clients back or customers back to the store to buy additional new products.
That's very, very powerful. And that's the reason why I thought about customer service in relation to the 8 holistic items that you mentioned. Do you have a name for those 8?
Yes, absolutely. We call them productivity amplifiers.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and let me ask you. Let's step back for a moment. How did you get into the business that you're in now with productivity and technology? Where did you start out, and how did you grow your business to where it is today?
Well, I spent approximately 30 years in corporate America, started out and went through the IT groups. I actually have undergrads in business and information technology. So I spent approximately 30 years starting as a programmer, working my way up to the most senior ranks of IT. And then from there, about 7 years ago, is during the financial services meltdown. I was in financial services technology at the time. As they say, I was given the opportunity to do new things.
Excellent.
Having just had a major birth milestone of having turned 50, is that I'd always wanted my own company, so I decided that now was the time. Literally, the morning that I was laid off on the train on the way out of Boston that day, I started writing my business plan and have never looked back. And it's been a great ride ever since. How from there I ended up as from a CIO into basically a training and speaking company is that I had taught one night a week at Bentley University. It was called Bentley College at the time, on various computer topics, and loved adult ed. It was like the Tuesday night adjunct faculty thing. Loved it and decided to start a company. I wanted to do it in that area. So as a result, it brought me into technology management, which was my background. And then from there, how I moved into productivity was what I realized was a couple of things. One of which is that in IT for 30 years is what are you in fact doing? You're enhancing the productivity of those within the business through automation. Secondly, in the combination of my last 7 years in business, in my own business, Manager Mechanics, as I've been teaching basically leadership and business skills, so much of those, whether it's delegation or types of time management or things along that line, are very, very tied to productivity from a corporate perspective. So the combination of having seen it for 30 years in business and talked about productivity and discussed it from so many perspectives, it dawned on me one day that what really the culmination of everything I've done for the past 30 years has been very, very related to productivity in one form or another.
Okay. And what do your customers look like? Are they medium-sized firms, Fortune 500 companies, manufacturing, service, technology?
Oh, actually, it's funny when you said, what do they look like? I was initially going to be a wise guy and said, they look like regular people, usually dressed business casual. But generally speaking, they're medium to large size organizations, and I don't particularly say corporations because have done it for state and federal government as well as an occasional nonprofit, sometimes actually a nonprofit for no cost, as just a giving back to the world. But most of it are medium and large corporations.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And can you give us a business case of an organization that was significantly challenged in the areas of productivity and how you were able to turn that situation around?
Yes, it's actually it's going to be one of the cases in the new book. The name, of course, has changed. But what happened was it was a medium-sized company, and it was growing 25 to 30% a year. The founder and CEO of it, his goal was to bring it to eventually be a public company. The problem was they were doing a great job growing revenue by, again, this 25 to 30%, is that their expenses associated with that revenue were going up 35 to 40%. So in fact, the bigger that they were getting, the worse their profit margins were. So obviously, as they're being looked at either by expanded VC or by going public, they have to show economies of scale, not the opposite. So what they did was went in and analyzed what's causing this difference. How is scale reducing their costs? Increasing rather than decreasing their costs. What we found was many of the processes that they had used internally worked great when they were a small firm. But as they grew, what happened is that as they were overloaded, they became less and less efficient. A specific example in there was they used to be able to ship product on time. As time went forward, their inventories were lower, their time to get product out the door increased. So what it did was it actually increased their shipping costs because instead of shipping product in inexpensive ways, they were doing overnight shipment, etc. And little by little, those costs increased. That was one example of many areas where expanded volume actually decreased efficiency.
Okay, excellent. And so, how were you able to solve the logistics issue or a system in with that?
Well, basically what we did, you talked to them regarding the, process improvement. We first tied it to their goals. One of the biggest goals is that they wanted to get bigger. From there, what we did was we looked and said, all right, as they're growing, what are the different, we had a holistic mindset. This is part of what we call the productivity pyramid, and we have a system around it called the productivity pyramid system. So this is exactly what we went through. We first tried to align with their goals. Their goal was that they wanted to grow, and they wanted to be able to increase rather than decrease profit margin. The next thing we did was we took a holistic view across all of the productivity amplifiers that I had mentioned, those 8, and said, all right, where are the issues? One of which, of course, was process improvement. Realized that they were having big bottlenecks and they were expediting. As soon as you hear the word expedite, you know that there is a productivity issue there. From there, what we did, we looked for supportive culture. We looked back to senior management and we say, hey, if we're going to institute these kinds of change within your company, then you're really going to have to come on board with us, and you're going to have to drive it, not us. You're the driver, we're the mechanic. Okay. From there, we went through and looked at the process improvement and other things in general. From there, we measured it and said, is what we're doing works? Measurement is, again, key. Then from there, the reinvestment that we're looking for was, in fact, increased profit margin, some of which was released, some of which was just to show that they have it, and some, in fact, was put into more productivity and other related projects. And then lastly, you would want to document what you did so that this process of continual improvement can be reiterated and used again in other areas.
Okay, excellent. Now, with the last minute that we have here, what message would you like to leave with the listeners?
What I'd like to say is regarding productivity in general, or what I would say is this: I'd say that productivity is two-sided. Productivity that increases individual people, whether it be time management or things along that line, in aggregate helps the company. From an organizational perspective, what I would say is that all of your productivity initiatives have to do one of two things. They have to either either have to help you move toward a specific defined goal that you have for the company moving forward, or they have to provide time, money, and resources from other areas of operation that will, in fact, help you fund your future initiatives.
Well, I really like the concept of utilizing a holistic approach when it comes to organization and productivity improvement. And I'm really happy to hear that there's organizations out there like yourself that take that approach as opposed to looking at one area that maybe improves this area, but actually increase cost and time in other areas as well. Now, to close this out, I'd like to ask you if you could tell the listeners, if they would like to find out more about what you do, how can they get in contact with your organization to learn more about your products and services?
Well, thank you for asking. My company's name is Manager Mechanics, and we can be found at www.managermechanics.com.
Okay, excellent. Eric, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. That was very powerful information that you shared with the listeners, and thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.